The King of Qin sweeps the Six Harmonies, what majestic is the tiger's view. The King of Qin is human, how could he have a tiger-like view? He's just a fool. Would the King of Qin be willing to seek immortality without being able to do so? Do you regret it? Is there a strategy? Is it just an empty sigh? Twilight Dragon's Death in the Palace. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. I don't know if there are any pearls left in the box. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. A gust of evil wind wrapped around 3 or 2 pieces of snow, blowing onto a bright red robe. Wearing a pair of thief-like eyebrows and mouse eyes on his robe, this person's surname is Jean Wuming, and the people on the street call him Jean Mouthskin. It was not yet sunrise, and just as it was slightly dawn, he walked alone along the street towards the south. At the corner, with a bang, I opened my mouth and accidentally bumped into someone. He stood up from the ground with his hands propped up, and upon seeing it, it was the old Zhu Tu who had been picking up garbage at the street corner for years. You're his mother, you don't have eyes, do you? He opened his mouth and brushed the ashes at random, then kicked at old Zhu Tu. The old man, dressed in grey linen clothes, crawled to the side and chased closely behind with his mouth open. Turning a few more street corners, he opened his mouth and stepped on the ice, causing a dog to gnaw on the mud. By the time he covered his mouth and regained consciousness, old Zhu's head had already disappeared. It's really his mother unlucky. He opened his mouth and sat on the ground in sweaty sweat, wiped his forehead, and touched the big and ridiculous envelope in his arms and another slightly smaller envelope. Then he was relieved. He never thought about why he couldn't run away from an old man who couldn't eat enough or wear warm clothes, nor did he think about how an old man who was picking up waste would happen to collide with him so coincidentally. Passing by Wu Xing, he opened his mouth and looked around, took out the slightly smaller envelope, shook his sleeves a few times, and threw it into the courtyard with a whoosh. He clung tightly to the door, listening to the commotion inside. Jia, sand, 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 Jia. Upon hearing the envelope being taken into the room, he opened his mouth and straightened up, then turned around and walked towards the east. Tianjia, closest to the main hall, is home to either civil and military officials or high-ranking officials in the court. In short, it is either rich or noble. But relatively speaking, it is not as lively as the street. Open your mouth and open a gambling house in the human street. Every day and night, your body and bones are getting worse, and your brain's reactions are getting slower and slower. To the south of Tianjia, there is a grand mansion called the Right General's Mansion. Nowadays, this Right General is not someone else, but the son of Ma Hai, Ma Wu. When Ma Hai died, he was 14 years old. In just a few years, he won the martial arts championship and had been fighting in the military camp for many years. He also held the position of general and now has the peak strength of the 8 feathers. Compared to the gate of the general's mansion, Pizi's figure was 1 heaven and 1 earth, but he did not knock on the door, but instead walked around to the back of the general's mansion. The third one. Above. He groped back and forth on the stone wall, and with a gentle push, a small hole appeared at the base of the wall. With his mouth open and his body bent down, he stuffed the envelope in and pressed the gourd-like gourd, causing the small hole to close. Opening his mouth, he let out a deep breath, and the events of this year had come to an end. Thinking about it, he thought of a good place to go. Grass stick, grass stick. There is a tavern in the southeast of Dijia that only sells alcohol and nothing else. What do you want to eat? Bring it yourself. Opening his mouth and shouting loudly at the empty tavern, he walked to the counter on his own. Come. Come. 2 distant responses came from the cellar, where countless wines were stored, and the only entrance was through a hole behind the counter. After nearly a minute, a thin and frail man climbed up from the cave entrance, covered in a mixture of soil and alcohol. He calmly locked the hole, wiped the counter with his sleeve, and brought a jar of wine and a bowl from behind. It's really early. The man who was called a straw stick poured a bowl full of wine and pushed it over. His name is Wei Chao, and he is called grass stick just because he looks like a stick. Opening his mouth and ignoring him, he picked up the bowl with both hands, pressed it against his mouth, and after 4 or 5 bites, he drank a bowl of wine. Good wine. He blushed slightly on his cheeks and reached for it from his arms. With a clang, he took out a silver ingot and smashed it onto the counter. The wine money, even with the previous accounts, is enough to break the sky. The rest should be used to make up for your health. Opening his mouth, he reached out and patted Wei Chao, but Wei Chao remained silent. With a cold snort, he took the cold silver and weighed it twice before casually receiving it next to the ledger. Next year, switch to a different business and let me run this tavern. It won't hurt you either. Wei Chao stopped Zhang Pizzi, who was about to leave. Opening his mouth, he hesitated for a moment and turned his head. You have such a strong physique that you're not afraid of being hit by someone with a red eye who can't get up from the casino. No problem, there are still a few people under my command. What about the day your subordinates didn't listen to you? Wei Chao didn't know how old he was this year, but he knew that his physique was almost unable to support the chaotic life of the casino. Then remember to collect the body for me, he said with a smile and turned around to leave. Wei Chao didn't say anything, just took the bowl back and put it aside, then wiped the table. Looking at the street still snowing, he sighed and turned around and descended from the entrance of the cave. The interior of the cave entrance is relatively spacious, and within a few steps, there is a quite large wine cellar. Wei Chao has long been classified and stored for different vintages and techniques of wine. In the deepest part of the wine cellar, there was a separate jar of wine. Wei Chao took the oil lamp and slowly walked over, lifted the lid of the jar, lit a little, and wiped a little to his lips. There was a slight bitterness hidden beneath the aroma of the wine, and Wei Chao's lips slightly raised. He will use this jar of wine to do something big. Wild grass leaves roots waiting for revival. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Li Long's angry roar shook the sea. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Old friends still miss their father when they see their son. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Co Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Seeing things shows that I am by my side. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. This is mother. Zhao Tairan scolded, his hands trembling a little. This is the drawing of the golden platform. Zhao Tairan quickly walked to the window and pushed it away. The cold wind poured into the house, and Zhao Tairan picked up the blueprint, shining brightly, and compared it to the distant golden terrace. Zhao Tairan quickly closed the window again, dragged Ah Dong into the room, and lowered his voice. Where did this thing come from? Besides being shocked, Zhao Tairan now has more palpitations. This cannot be any imitation at all. The texture of this paper is exclusive to the royal family. He has been to the palace exams several times back then, and he remembers the quality of this paper for a lifetime. He wants to bomb the golden platform, only Adong knows about it. Besides, his school is not on the street at all. It's almost out of the street, and there aren't many people passing by on a regular basis, so there's no possibility of being eavesdropped on. Even if he is overheard, he will still report to the official. How could he be given the blueprint of the golden platform? No. I don't know. Adong was also confused, thinking about it, as if there was only one answer. Old Zhu's head. I bumped into him, didn't he? Give it to me. Zhao Tairan tapped his head with his hands, even though his intelligence was top-notch, he couldn't come up with a reason now. Adong was also startled by this, and Zhao Tairan just nodded without saying anything. Zhao Tairan walked from the inner room to the ground, hid the blueprint, turned around and left the door, stopped a carriage and headed straight to the street corner. There is a sizable pile of miscellaneous items at the street corner, which is the location of old Zhu too. Zhao Tairan got off the car and walked back and forth around the pile of junk, looking at it several times. I haven't seen the shadow of old Zhu's head. Me. Someone patted Zhao Tairan from behind, startling him. Looking back, it was old Zhu too. Old Zhu was wearing tattered linen clothes, and as the new year approached, he didn't have anything decent on his body. There were countless layers of clothes stuffed inside. A hair that had not been taken care of for many years, with wrinkles on its face, and flesh sticking together, covered in dirt. Zhao Tairan looked at old Zhu and couldn't believe it. He, an old man, could steal the blueprint of the Golden Terrace from the palace. Old Zhu also looked at Zhao Tairan, and there was a strange noise coming from his throat. It was probably stuck in phlegm, but he didn't know what to say. Suddenly, old Zhu grabbed Zhao Tairan and pulled him towards the end of the pile of miscellaneous items. Zhao Tairan quickly fixed himself and pulled back. What are you doing? Old Zhu quickly waved his hand, gesturing for Zhao Tairan to wait, then turned around and found an inkstone and half of the ink from somewhere. He smiled and handed it to Zhao Tairan. Zhao Tailan instinctively reached out and took it over. He looked at it and realized that the inkstone was not brand new, but it was probably something that many wealthy people didn't want. The ink quality was also good, and it was probably picked up by old Zhu from the other end of Tianjia. Old Zhu still didn't speak, he just pushed the inkstone and continued to smile. Zhao Tairan seemed to understand what he meant. After all, the waste paper and books that his school had eliminated were mostly given to old Zhu too. He was thanking himself. He didn't want to say anything more, so he could only nod slightly, give old Zhu some money, and then stop the carriage from going back the same way. The carriage passed by the school and picked up a dong, then turned to the tavern. The door of the tavern was half open, and Ah Dong pushed it open. Zhao Tairan looked inside, but there was no one. Where are people? Wei Chao. Zhao Tailan shouted inside and walked towards it. This is also approaching evening, and the closing sign has already been hung outside. It is normal for the tavern to be empty. But if the shopkeeper is not here, it's not reasonable. Zhao Tairan walked to the counter and tiptoed inside to see that the entrance was wide open in all directions. He shouted a few more times inside, but no one responded. Zhao Tairan slapped his thigh and asked Ah Dong to insert the door, then he slowly descended to the bottom of the hole. As expected, the lights in the wine cellar were still on, and Wei Chao collapsed beside the innermost wine tank, unconscious. Zhao Tailan cursed and hurriedly rubbed in, causing Wei Chao's lips to turn purple and his eyelids to tremble. He glanced at the open jar of wine next to him again, as if he understood what was going on. And in the golden platform beside the main hall, countless craftsmen knelt neatly, and a child walked between them, walking back and forth. These craftsmen dare not show off their grandeur. In front of this group of people, there are still two people standing, one is Zhao Jiabei, and the other is majestic and imposing, but unfortunately not very tall. Uncles, haven't anyone really hidden the blueprint of this golden platform? The tone of the child's speech may sound slightly different from that of an ordinary person, but it cannot be said. Seeing no response from anyone, he had to casually press down on a craftsman. With a loud bang, the head he had pressed down on exploded instantly, and plasma was emitting a faint heat in the uncovered golden platform. Your Majesty, is it a bit bad for you to take action in this golden platform? Zhao Jiabei whispered in a sharp voice, but it reached the ears of every craftsman. The skin of a person, the face of a person, the heart of a person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I don't know if it's good or not, all I know is that the problem hasn't been solved yet. This child's name is Yan Lu, the only son of Yan Bo. I don't know where he came from, but he was not born to the Empress Dowager. What's even more bizarre is that this child has the strength of an ordinary warrior, but no one knows how many feathers it is, and no one dares to explore it. The most bizarre thing is that when Yen Bo brought this child back, he only looked so big that he didn't even look like he was 10 years old. After so many years, Yen Lo surprisingly showed no change in his appearance and physique. Yen Lo turned to look at Zhao Jiabei, completely ignoring the group of people kowtowing to him incessantly, and placed his hand on the head of another craftsman. "I hope your majesty can forgive me." The man next to Zhao Jiabei jumped up and kicked Yen Li's hand away. Yen Lo immediately turned around, grabbed his other foot with the other hand, and threw the person back. The person landed steadily, with 7 feathers appearing at his feet. His name is Zhangzhe, and he does not hold a specific official position in the court. If one insists, his status seems to be the same as that of Yin Liang. The Suo Jia Wei under Ma Wu's command was the same group of people brought back by Yen Bo back then. And Zhangzhe's subordinates also had a group of people called feather pickers, as the name suggests, who only killed warriors. But when it comes to the sky, it ultimately belongs to the royal family. The strength of the feather-plucking people is far inferior to that of the Suo Jia Wei. The Suo Jia Wei only brings a feeling of not being close to strangers. Generally, the appearance of the Suo Jia Wei means complete annihilation. And this feather picker is more like another Dali temple. He doesn't do much killing, but has a way of collecting evidence. "Why did you stop me?" Yen Li's expression remained unchanged and he still pressed his hand on it. As the new year approaches, the feast of the Holy Emperor will be held on this golden platform. Even if your majesty is the crown prince, it is unlikely to delay the construction period. Zhao Jiabei held down Zhangzhe, who was about to take action. "Do you have a solution?" With a bang, another craftsman's head shattered in response. "Wei Chen, you have your own way, don't bother your majesty." Zhao Jiabei lowered his head, his face slightly angry, but he dared not let Yen Lo see. "Then you go ahead and do it." Yen Lo stood there motionless, unsure of what he was thinking, and walked straight out of the golden platform. Being unpredictable and lacking in temperament is the evaluation of Yen Lo by the people in the palace. It's not feasible to reason with this prince, why bother making such a move? Zhao Jiabei shook his head and gestured for the craftsman to get up and continue working. "If you want to kill, just let him kill. Kill a few people, and then persuade him to leave." "What if he doesn't leave?" "If he doesn't leave, even if he kills this craftsman, no one can control him." Zhao Jiabei looked at the gradually darkening sky and patted Zhangzhe. "The design of this golden platform is lost. It's not big, it's not small. Why bother finding it back?" Zhangzhe stomped his foot. Just now, Yen Lo said with such strength that he couldn't figure out how many feathers Yen Lo had. "The royal things, even if burned into ashes, must be brought back to me." Zhao Jiabei glanced at these craftsmen. "Besides, what's missing is the original manuscript, and there are many things on it that cannot be leaked to the outside world. Do you understand?" Zhao Jiabei glanced at Zhangzhe. Zhangzhe looked at Zhao Jiabei, reacted for a moment, and nodded. "I won't trouble you, I'll send someone there." As soon as possible, Zhao Jiabei nodded and slowly left the golden platform, pounding his back. The craftsmen resumed work one after another, and the 2 headless corpses that had died suddenly were also cleaned up. Zhangzhe looked up and down at the interior of the golden platform, which was entirely made of gold, almost like a replica of the main hall. Now it's just that the top has not been completed yet, and there has been a mistake at this critical moment. No one can bear Yen Bo's anger. Zhangzhe leaped up and reached the top of the golden platform, searching for clues in all directions. "If you want to steal the blueprint from the golden platform, you can only go here." On the other hand, Zhao Tairan also dragged Wei Chao out from below, sealed the wine cellar, and quickly sent Wei Chao to the hospital. Unexpectedly, Wei Chao seemed to have regained his senses and didn't know whether he was awake or not. Anyway, his hand grabbed a drawer next to the counter at some point, and Zhao Tairan and Ah Dong couldn't open it no matter how hard they tried. Zhao Tairan could only open the drawer. There were several identical green pills in it. When Zhao Tairan's eyes turned, he took out one and put it into Wei Chao's mouth. Then he took a bowl of water and poured it directly into Wei Chao's mouth. As expected, within reason, Wei Chao's lips slowly returned to their normal color, coughed twice, and slowly opened their eyes to look at Zhao Tairan. Why didn't I poison you to death? Zhao Tailan threw Wei Chao onto the ground and took a sip of water. Poison me, I'll daydream for you every day. Wei Chao slowly sat on the ground holding the drawer, patting his chest. Uncle, are you trying wine, trying poisoning? This startled Ah Dong, thinking that Wei Chao had already passed away. It's okay, don't delay. Wei Chao patted his chest and took a deep breath. It's okay, which brewer can have trouble drinking their own wine? Zhao Tairan threw his water bowl onto the table and pulled Wei Chao up from the ground. Between life, death, and words. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. The heart is like wood and stone, without feeling anything. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Entering the golden Luan to peek at the secret sin. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text.